Let the great debate begin. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has announced the nominees for the 2020 induction class, and the acts selected are as controversial as ever. Coming up next, I'll share my thoughts on the nominees, but I really want to hear your thoughts too. Rock Hall 2020, that's right now on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominations for the class of 2020 have been announced, and like every year, the list is certain to be a polarizing one. For an institution intended to honor the history of rock and roll, it's amazing how frustrated and sometimes even angry fans can get over the acts that get nominated or inducted. And I get it. Every year, it's easy to look at the announced nominees and marvel at the legacy acts that have yet to be inducted, listed alongside younger acts in just their first or second year of eligibility. This year's list is no exception. Take the Dave Matthews Band, for example. They've been nominated for the class of 2020 in their first year of eligibility, while six-time nominees KRAFTWERK have been eligible for literally decades. In fact, when they were nominated last year, I even predicted they'd finally make the cut for 2019. But here we are again, wondering if 2020 will be their year. The same goes for the MC5, RUFUS with CHAKA and TODD RUNDGREN. Those four acts were all nominated last year as well. So if you asked me if I thought the nomination and induction process was fair, I guess I'd have to say no, not really. But to be honest, if longevity was the chief criteria for inclusion in the Rock Hall, it would be a far less interesting institution. I'm actually very much in favor of the Rock Hall's efforts to try to balance the induction roster each year with a mix of older and so-called newer acts. I like the variety that it brings to the ceremony. I'm also in favor of the way they've diversified the types of acts that they're including in their nominations. Over the past several years, we've seen an increasing number of hip-hop acts receiving nominations. I think that's appropriate. If you look at how popular music has developed over the years, I think it makes complete sense. After all, hip-hop, rap, and of course R&B all have their roots in rock and roll. Hell, the very genesis of rock and roll music should largely be credited to black musicians, so it seems downright disrespectful not to include their contributions to the evolution of the genre. But I know not everyone is going to agree about that and about how rock and roll should be defined. I've heard all the arguments before, and I don't want to just rehash all my comments that I made on this subject in my video last year when the 2019 nominees were announced. But here's the key thing that you should know about my feelings about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't take it seriously. For better or worse, I just don't take it seriously. I can't. For all the reasons everyone complains about, yes, but the difference is that while some take umbrage at who and what gets included, my response is more like, so what? And it isn't so what, as in I don't care. It's more that I don't want to get so caught up in the debate that it isn't fun anymore. Because it's rock and roll. It's supposed to be fun. And for me, and hopefully for you, it's fun to speculate about who I think may or may not get inducted, about who might win the fan vote, about who should get used to repeating the phrase, it's an honor just to be nominated. So let's talk about the nominations. There are 16 acts on the ballot this year, and 9 of those are first-time nominees. I mentioned Dave Matthews Band earlier and the fact that this is their first year of eligibility. Now, I'm a Dave Matthews fan. I think they're one of the best live acts out there, which I think plays a huge part in their longevity. But that may also be part of the problem. I'm not so sure that their impact on rock and roll as a whole has gone far enough to earn a spot in the class of 2020, or for that matter, any class. As much as I enjoy the music, I'm just not seeing them getting inducted at any time in the foreseeable future. Soundgarden, on the other hand, may have a good shot. They're one of the few bands to come out of the so-called grunge scene of the mid-90s and actually have a sustained impact on rock music. They're also a likable band for both their fans and their peers. What I mean by that is, I think they'll draw really strong support from the fan vote, but also from fellow rockers that are voting members of the Rock Hall. The question is, though, will support for Soundgarden come at the expense of support for other hard rock acts like fellow first-time nominees T-Rex, Thin Lizzy, and Motorhead? It's remarkable to think that those three legacy rock acts have never been nominated before. And while I think that all three deserved recognition, T-Rex has probably been the most influential of them all. Definitely strong odds on them being inducted in this class. Another first-time nominee, believe it or not, is the Doobie Brothers. This is a band that a lot of you have chimed in on in the comments of my other videos, pointing out how long they've been snubbed. And while it's true that they've been eligible for many years, I'm still not convinced that they've earned it. Not that they can, do more at this point. That's part of how broken this system is. If the Doobies don't get inducted this time, what'll be different next time? Then there's Pat Benatar. This one surprised me at first because somehow I had it in my head that she was already in the Rock Hall. In any case, I think she's a strong contender, if only because, just keeping it real here, she's one of only 3 women on the ballot this year. And her stiffest competition is likely to come from another 80s music icon, and that's Whitney Houston. In my Rock Hall snubs video, I highlighted Whitney as an artist I thought was overdue for induction. She's an obvious choice to me. When it comes to pop music divas, few women have shined as brightly as Whitney Houston or made as strong a mark on their category. Rounding out the first-time nominees is an act that's bound to be the most controversial name on the list, and that's the Notorious B.I.G. Not everybody is on board with rap artists being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like I said before, I get that. I know a ton of rock fans are probably pissed off when Tupac was inducted in 2017. 2 years later, his arch nemesis is now nominated. Will the Rock Hall put Biggie Smalls in just to avoid rekindling an East Coast-West Coast rivalry? Well, that won't be the reason, of course, but after passing over LL Cool J 2 years in a row, 2020 may indeed be the year the Rock Hall opens its doors to rap again. Next, let's talk about the acts that have had multiple nominations already, beginning with KRAFTWERK. This was one of the 2 acts I picked wrong last year. I thought KRAFTWERK would make the cut for the class of 2019 due to the massive impact they've had as pioneers of electronic music. I'm going to double down on them this year and say that their 6th nomination is the one that works. But who knows, it could take 7. Speaking of KRAFTWERK's influence, I think Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails would absolutely credit that band as having a strong impact on his music. I have to say though, as much as I love 9 Inch Nails, and it pains me to say it, I'm not thinking that this 3rd nomination is the one they get in with. I do think they deserve it, but I'm not sure that they've done enough in recent years to convince voters that their impact on music is as innovative and lasting as their fans know it to be. I'd love to be wrong on this, but I don't think I am. That being said, I do think fellow 3-time nominees Depeche Mode have a strong chance of making the class of 2020. They very naturally slide into the void, so to speak, left by last year's inductees, The Cure. And while Depeche Mode haven't been super visible over the past year, the massive victory lap The Cure has been taking is probably still having a halo effect on them. And again, while Depeche Mode and 9 Inch Nails have both been nominated twice before, they've never shared the ballot. It's possible they could split the vote, of course, but if the scales tip in either act's favor, I think Depeche Mode would win the day. Then there's multi-nominees RUFUS featuring CHAKA Khan and the MC5. And let me say, you probably could not get 2 more different acts than those. My gut tells me that in spite of the fact that they've both been previously nominated 3 and 4 times respectively, this probably isn't going to be the year for either of them. The competition is just too strong. There's just 2 more acts on the nominations list, both of whom are receiving their 2nd nominations this year. When TODD Rundgren was nominated for the first time last year, I was blown away by the amount of support I was hearing from music fans, and then even more loudly, the cries of disappointment when he was passed over. He was my 2nd quote-unquote wrong pick last year, and like KRAFTWERK, I'm going to double down on him this year. It's a tough call though, since his impact as a producer may be bigger than that of his as a performer. Finally, there's Judas Priest. Next to the Doobie Brothers, Judas Priest was probably the act I've heard most mentioned by viewers as a band that has been criminally snubbed by the Rock Hall of Fame. There's no doubt the heavy metal genre has long been neglected by the Rock Hall, with Metallica being the last high-profile act to be inducted, and that was a decade ago. Judas Priest has been eligible for induction for 20 years now, and I have a strong feeling this is going to be the year they break down the door. Alright, so to wrap it all up, I'll make my prediction for who I think will make the cut as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction class of 2020. And remember, this isn't my personal preferences or my favorites. That would be a very different list. This is my prediction of who I think the Rock Hall is going to select, starting with Depeche Mode, Whitney Houston, Judas Priest, KRAFTWERK, TODD Rundgren, and Soundgarden. Of those acts, I expect Depeche Mode, Judas Priest, and Soundgarden to do very well with the fan vote. But hey, ultimately it's just a guess. Last year I guessed pretty well, getting 4 out of 6 right, and predicted Radiohead or KRAFTWERK as a toss-up, meaning Roxy Music was the only act I totally missed on. How did I do this time? We'll find out in January. Now, if you want to make your voice heard, be sure to participate in the online fan vote. That's taking place on Google this year, and you can see details about how to cast your vote on your screen right now. The final list of inductees will be announced in January, and the 2020 induction ceremony will be held on May 2nd. The ceremony will actually be broadcast live on HBO this year rather than being recorded and rebroadcast, so mark your calendars now. Meanwhile, what are your thoughts on this year's list of nominees? Is there anyone that you think has a lock on being inducted? Or are there acts that you don't think quite deserve the honor? Who is an act that got snubbed this year that you think should be on the ballot? How do you feel about rap and hip-hop going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And are you one of those who thinks the whole thing is just a sham anyway? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.